A wooden stall stood at the center of the crowd, barely holding its ground as customers waved their hands and leaned in, desperate to be noticed. Behind the counter, a young clerk anxiously asked his assistant to give him 3 of the small ones and 2 of the big ones. She said she understood, but before complying, she quickly handed an order to another customer. Not long after, the frenzy was finally over because they sold out. The assistant told the clerk, Shiro, that they did it. Shiro remarked that the sale went so well, and he also praised the assistant for being helpful. Just then, he decided to look at their profit for the day. He found that they earned 51 silver coins and 10,900 bronze coins, and if they converted that into Japanese yen, that would be over 1,600,000. Their capital was 127,550 yen, so their profit was incredibly huge. Shiro couldn't believe it, as he struggled to believe that the calculations were correct. As they stared at their earnings, the assistant said that she had no idea they could make that much. She thought it was awesome, especially since Shiro could sell so easily. To her, he was like a magician. Embarrassed, Shiro claimed that it was nothing like that, and he said she was exaggerating. Back in modern Japan, Shiro couldn't believe that the place in front of him even existed. At that moment, he was standing in a forest. Behind him was a town in the distance, and it looked like something from a fantasy world. Looking at the sky, there were 2 moons. However, in front of him, there was a Japanese-style room where his grandma's altar was placed. Shiro tried to assess the situation before him. His full name was Amata Shiro, and he had just moved into the house his grandmother had left him. When he opened the altar room closet, he found something peculiar. It was a channel to another world. He thought there was no way this strange phenomenon could have happened. He even convinced himself that he was just exhausted. He had just resigned from a black company the previous month, so he assumed he was overthinking. Bro had some serious PTSD. He laughed it off, thinking it was just a hallucination. However, when he took a closer look, he realized that it wasn't. He suddenly thought of his grandma, wondering if it was the secret she had mentioned. His grandma went missing 7 years ago and was finally proclaimed dead by the government the previous month. Back when he was a boy, he impatiently asked her to tell him her secret already. His grandma only laughed, playfully saying that it wouldn't be a secret if she told him. Annoyed, he slapped her hand away, saying that he hated her. Still, his grandma kept a smile on her face, promising that she would tell him once he got older. In the end, Shiro's grandma passed away without telling him, and he could still remember her doing the double peace pose back when she promised to reveal the secret. Her past photo was of her hitting a double peace pose, even though Shiro told her not to. She took the secret to the grave like a champ. Just then, he noticed a letter placed behind his grandma's picture frame. It was for him. He was surprised, and he wondered if it could be her will. In the letter, his grandma apologized for not telling him the truth about a magician who came to Japan 80 years ago from a different world named Rufartio. Essentially, there were 6 main points in the letter. First, the closet was connected to a world named Rufartio. Second, in Rufartio, magic, skills, and other strange powers existed. Third, there were also dangerous monsters. Fourth, there were other races besides humans. Fifth, his grandma had put a ring in the envelope that would help Shiro understand the language of another world. Sixth, he should put on the ring and read the book behind the altar. His grandma reassured him that he would understand once he got there. Shiro was stunned after reading the letter, and he felt like it was too much information. That's not a letter, that's onboarding. He immediately checked for the ring, and sure enough, it really was there. There were also 2 books, but he couldn't make out the language used in them. Just then, he recalled his grandma's words, telling him to put the ring on and read the book. When he wore the ring, he was shocked to see how cool its ability was. He wondered how he could suddenly read the book's contents. Still, he couldn't understand it at all. Suddenly, he heard a notification informing him that he had received a skill called equivalent exchange. Frightened, he accidentally dropped the books, wondering who that was. He frantically looked around, but there was no one there. He wondered if this meant he got a skill, just like in light novels or games. Suddenly, another notification popped up, telling him that he acquired the skill called inventory. Shiro noticed that he heard a voice every time he got a skill. Suddenly, he shut the book closed, claiming that he was done. He then stared at the ceiling, thinking of what he should do next. Just then, an idea came to mind. He wanted to go to another world with his new power. Decision-making powered by vibes. He was reminded of his grandma's letter, where she told him not to worry because he would understand once he got there. Shiro asked himself if he should go or not. Just then, he remembered how his grandma always said that she wanted him to go out and travel. However, it was already late, and he still needed to buy some food at the home center the next day. The very next morning, Shiro prayed at his grandma's altar, and he told her that he would go. Right after that, he packed his bag and prepared to go on an adventure. Shiro stepped into a different world, and he followed the path right before him. Not long after, he found quiet homes scattered across the land, but he kept right on walking. Soon, he walked into a bustling town. filled with festive banners and travelers of different races roaming the streets. Stalls also lined the paths, their displays overflowing with fresh produce and goods. All of this impressed Shiro, and he remarked that the town was quite nice. However, he noticed that walking made him hungry. Suddenly, one of the vendors called out to him, wondering if he wanted a skewer. The vendor said he'd give it at a discount, which made Shiro's mouth water. Shiro asked what meat it was, and the vendor proudly said that it was horned rabbit meat. He could get that much for just 3 bronze coins. Though it sounded like a good deal, Shiro had to apologize to the vendor because he didn't have any money with him. The vendor was confused because it seemed like Shiro was simply asking. Bro was window shopping meat. As Shiro kept walking, he couldn't stop thinking about the horned rabbit meat because it looked so delicious. Just then, he checked his pockets and found that he had 4,200 yen. It was his change after buying from the convenience store before coming to this world. He groaned, wishing he could buy that skewer with Japanese yen. Then, as if the gods themselves heard him, his money evaporated from his right palm, and on his left a couple of coins fell out of nowhere. Shocked, Shiro wondered what this was. His money had just been magically converted, and he thought there was no way it could happen. Exchange rates fear him. Without wasting time, he ran back to the stall that sold the skewers. He held the coin by his face and asked the vendor if this was what he meant by bronze coin. Confused, the vendor confirmed what was definitely obvious. Shiro awkwardly laughed while the vendor assumed that he was a traveler from another country. He could tell by the look of his clothes, which was visibly different. Shiro immediately lied that his guess was right, which made the vendor glad. He happily told Shiro that the bronze coin was what he was talking about. Just then, Shiro smirked, realizing that this was the equivalent exchange skill at work. Suddenly, Shiro asked the vendor to give him not just 2, but 3 skewers. To make it even better, the vendor informed him that it would be 8 bronze coins because he had come all that way. Right away, Shiro received his order. He immediately thanked the vendor for his kindness, and without wasting time, he opened his mouth wide. However, as soon as he took a bite, he noticed something peculiar. This was his first meal from another world, but it was so plain. There was no seasoning at all. Bro ate medieval sadness. As he kept eating, he thought about the equivalent exchange skill and what it could do. The problem was whether he could return it to Japanese yen. He sighed, knowing that the skill was unconsciously activated earlier. Just then, Shiro expressed his wish to exchange the bronze coins for Japanese yen. To his surprise, it actually turned back. This meant that using equivalent exchange, he could convert currencies to either world's currency. In other words, if he earned a lot of money there, he would be rich in Japan too. He was stunned as he only then realized how great this skill was. Next, he wanted to try using 10,000 yen with the equivalent exchange skill. The skill did its magic, and to Shiro's surprise, the color was different from earlier. He wondered if it was a silver coin, but to make sure, he asked the vendor if he could use it. The vendor felt uneasy, and he asked if he had run out of bronze coins. He revealed that he didn't have enough change for Shiro's silver coin. At that moment, Shiro realized that 1 silver coin was equivalent to 10,000 yen, and 1 bronze coin was about 100 yen. Currently, he had 2 silver coins and 34 bronze coins. He couldn't use 50 or 1 yen because the lowest currency in this world was bronze, meaning the minimum requirement to use the skill was 100 yen. His brain suddenly went accountant mode. With his new knowledge, Shiro tossed the silver coin in the air with joy. From the vendor's reaction, the money he brought should be enough to explore the entire town. With that, he planned to explore some more. As he wandered deeper, he started to wonder what this place was because it was so lively. His eyes widened with curiosity, knowing that this was the world's marketplace. He wanted to talk to the people around him, especially the girl with cat ears. Suddenly, Shiro noticed that everyone was staring at him. This made him believe that his clothes were truly that strange. Their gaze was starting to hurt him, so he decided to buy some clothes. However, just as he was about to leave, a little girl approached him, nervously wondering if he wanted a flower. Shiro was surprised to see that it was a kid, so he politely asked how much she was selling the flowers for. The girl's face lit up with hope, and she quickly told Shiro that it was 3 bronze coins. She immediately changed her mind and decided it was only worth 2 coins. Shiro pondered the price, which made the girl anxious. She asked if it was too expensive, so she decided to change the price to 1 coin instead, price dropping faster than crypto. Just then, Shiro pointed at the yellow flower and he gave the girl his payment. To her shock, he gave her 3 bronze coins. Shiro nonchalantly mentioned the girl's first price, but she still asked if it was really okay. Shiro confirmed it, but in return he wanted her to tell him something. Before saying anything more, Shiro asked the girl for her name and she replied that it was Aina. Shiro introduced himself in return, and he said it was nice to meet her. He held his hand out to Aina, telling her to simply call him Shiro. Aina shook his hand, and she said it was nice to meet him too. Just then, Shiro moved on to the next question. He asked what the name of the town was, which immediately puzzled Aina. Shiro explained that he was a traveler, so Aina ended up explaining everything to him. Thanks to her, he got a lot of information. This town was a district of Gilawam's kingdom named Ninarich. There were 3 kinds of currency there. 100 bronze coins were equal to 1 silver coin, and 100 silver coins were equal to 1 gold coin. 1 gold coin was also equal to 1 million yen. The average income there was up to 8 silver coins a month, and it seemed like only a few people had gold coins in that town. On top of that, no one was allowed to do business without arrangements with the local government, even for a kid like Aina. Shiro smiled because he heard something good. Just then, Shiro asked Aina if she could sell him 10 more flowers. Shocked, Aina asked if he was serious. Shiro handed her his coins, claiming that he was serious. If he bought just one, he couldn't use it for decoration and it would be too plain. Without hesitating, he gave her 30 bronze coins. Aina stuttered, then she broke down in tears while thanking him. This is wholesome damage. Shiro smiled at her, knowing his grandma would be happy with the flowers. Aina was curious about his grandma, but Shiro said it was nothing and thanked her for the flowers instead. Just then, Aina laughed through her tears because he said the flowers were beautiful. Suddenly, Shiro asked Aina to show him where the government office was. Aina was more than happy to do it, and she promised to take him there. She showed him the way and urged him to follow her. Not long after, Aina and Shiro finally arrived at the government office building. Aina proudly showcased the building, which left Shiro in awe. Just then, he asked if it was okay because he was a foreigner. He was worried they might arrest him, but Aina reassured him that it was fine and that everyone there was kind. However, Aina's words weren't so accurate when Shiro had to face a strange grandma who stared at him with an angry look. She demanded to know if he was from another country. Immigration anxiety speedrun. Shiro froze because the woman scared him so much. He quickly replied that he was a foreigner, more or less. Just then, the grandma told him to write his name and business hours, then indicate how he would be selling his wares. He could be a hawker type, one who sells wares by carrying them through the streets and earns about 10 bronze coins per day. He could be a peddler type, who also earns 10 bronze coins per day, or a shop owner type who could earn 3 silver coins per day. He could choose any of the 3. They literally said, choose your poverty level. For a shop type, the contract would be a minimum of 10 days. For now, Shiro wanted to try the second type for 5 days starting tomorrow. He could write in the language of another world because of the ring's effects, which stunned Aina. After that, Shiro handed the form to the grandma. When she read his name, she remarked that it was strange. As the woman checked the form, Shiro thought about the 1,000 yen per day payment. Now that he thought about it, opening a shop in a flea market around Tokyo costs around 3,000 yen. Shiro smiled, gladly saying that it was so cheap. He realized that he had just said that out loud, and he even forgot that he didn't know the prices in this world. That confidence was premature. Just then, the grandma mentioned how cheap it was. The mayor was the one who regulated the prices. For the sake of the town, she hoped his business would prosper. Shiro agreed with her and he thanked her. The whole thing only took 15 minutes, and he was surprised that everything went smoothly. After that, Shiro planned to go back to the market. He thanked Aina for her help, and she hesitantly said goodbye to him. Shiro slowly walked away, but before he could go far, Aina frantically told him that the market wasn't that way. She redirected him to the right path, and she walked alongside him. As they went through the market, Aina asked Shiro if he had already decided what to sell tomorrow. Shiro proudly started talking about his merchandise, but then he realized that he hadn't thought about it yet. He now wondered what he could sell in the market. Aina suggested selling goods for adventurers, as there were many of them in town. Shiro thought she was right since he saw that a lot of people in the market were dressed like adventurers. Aina explained that it was because many monsters spawned in the nearby forest, and adventurers came to the town to aim for the drop items. Shiro shivered in fear, realizing that it was the same forest that he had gone through. It turned out that there were many monsters there, and he was lucky that he was still alive. Ignorance really was bliss. While Shiro thought about the concept of selling goods for adventurers, Aina shared that it was the exact reason why her flowers didn't sell that well. Shiro was surprised to hear it, but Aina reassured him that she was happy because he bought so many flowers from her. She twirled around in joy, saying that she was so happy to have met him. Shiro felt shy, and he told her that she was making him blush. Suddenly, Aina asked if he wanted her to guide him around the market. Shiro was surprised by the offer, but he didn't dare to decline. After that, Aina showed him the lantern and flint shop, the cape and sleeping bag shop, the knife and whetstone shop, and the rope shop. Shiro noticed that there were many shops that sold adventurer goods, and Aina agreed, noting that it was exactly as she said. Shiro found her comment funny, so he playfully hit her back. However, it turned out that he hit her too hard, causing her to cough. Aina got friendly fired. Not long after, Aina dragged him all around town. She showed him the preserved food shop and more. At that moment, Shiro realized that Aina was such a good kid, and he predicted that she would become a good wife someday. Jesus Christ, she's 8, bro. As Aina talked about the shops that sold lantern oil and stew, Shiro's mind was elsewhere. He thought about wanting a beautiful wife and daughter as soon as possible. Suddenly, Aina noticed that he wasn't listening, so she asked if he had heard her. Shiro asked what she said, so Aina asked him if he had already decided what to sell. He said that he did, causing Aina to demand that he tell her what it was. Shiro revealed his answer through a whisper, which confused Aina. Clueless, she asked what that was. He said it like contraband. The next day, Shiro started his day by stretching his muscles. It was now time to prepare his goods. Aina suddenly approached him, greeting him with a good morning. Shiro asked if she was going to sell flowers again that day, and she confirmed that she would. She woke up early to harvest them. Shiro remarked that the flowers were beautiful and that she would surely sell many that day, which made Aina chuckle. She was determined to sell many flowers and buy medicine for her mother. Aina didn't stay for long, and she bid Shiro goodbye. She asked passers-by if they wanted a flower, but she accidentally got bumped into and knocked down. Despite falling to the ground, Aina remained optimistic and still asked random people if they wanted to buy from her. Hustle culture final boss. Shiro, who was watching her from afar, hoped that she could do it. He also promised to do his best. Just then, an adventurer approached Shiro, asking him what he was selling. The adventurer picked up one of the products, guessing that it was a box made from paper. He asked if it was a handicraft, but Shiro explained to him that it was a thing called matches. Inside the box, there was a small piece of wood that could produce fire. The adventurer was puzzled, as he had never heard of it before. Curious, he asked how the small piece of wood could produce fire. Shiro simply demonstrated the whole thing to the adventurer, showing him that by holding the wood and striking it on the side, he could create fire. Shiro thought it was easy, but the adventurer remained quiet. While he was demonstrating the way to use the matches, the adventurer suddenly freaked out, asking what the hell it was. He screamed as if he had witnessed witchcraft, proving just how shocked he was. That match broke his worldview. The adventurer, who was now sitting on the ground because of how startled he was, asked Shiro how he did such a thing. The crowd started gathering around Shiro, making him wonder just what the commotion was all about. He guessed that this was their first time seeing something like that. To simply answer the adventurer's question, he decided to show him again one more time. He lit the match, and as its flames started to glow, Shiro saw the same flabbergasted look the adventurer had flashed earlier. The crowd was baffled while Shiro raised the lit match as if he were performing a miracle. Bro is living for this moment. The crowd wondered what on earth this was, as they couldn't believe that just by striking the stick on the paper one could create fire. They wondered if this was a magical tool, but some thought it was impossible because they had never seen anything like it. Shiro struck while the iron was hot, and he immediately asked who wanted to try it. He promised it was easy and that anyone could do it. He lit a stick and became the Elon Musk of arson. Overcome by curiosity, some of the people volunteered to see for themselves. They lit up the matches and they were beyond amazed. As Shiro watched everything unfold, he told himself that things seemed to be coming together. When perusing through the market the previous day, he recognized something. This world, well, at least this city, turned out to have never heard of matches. So the previous day, he went back to his side and bought some matches to bring back to this world. A dwarf from the crowd remarked that he had lived for over 250 years, yet he had never once in his long life seen something quite like it. The adventurer from earlier agreed, noting that it was an amazing creation. He added that flint and steel worked, but it took an unbelievably long amount of time to get it to light. Additionally, carrying heavy magic tools with him wherever he went was also extremely troublesome. But alas, it was the burden of not having any witches in his party that meant he had to spend ages getting a fire started. Shiro talked as if he had experienced it himself, and he agreed with the man. He then went on to say that they no longer had to be shackled to such troublesome and costly options. He brought them freedom, and he brought them fire. Shiro spoke confidently as if he were pitching a project. Just then he raised a box of matches, making the crowd erupt in awe. "Sir, this ain't Shark Tank." He suggested that everyone buy one for themselves, and they immediately agreed to the idea. However, the adventurer suddenly asked Shiro to wait a second. He agreed that it was an amazing creation, but he wanted to know how much the matches cost. The crowd agreed with the adventurer's point, and they now guessed that the product was expensive. Meanwhile, Shiro smiled as the question had finally crossed everyone's minds. He's plotting this like a cult leader. He asked if they wanted to know how much it was, and the adventurer guessed that something around 80 bronze coins would be fair. Shiro listened closely while analyzing in his mind that one bronze coin would be equal to 100 yen, 75 British pence, or 95 American cents. He was starting to make sense of everything. He then began to go over the basics. To put it simply, he had two choices in how to sell the matches. He could sell them as a high-end good at a high-end price, or he could sell them for a lower price but make up for it by selling more. In the first method, the money in each transaction would be large. However, because the price was higher, fewer people could afford it, and therefore the number of buyers would be limited. The second method opposed this, in which everyone could afford the product, but this would mean that the profit made per item would be considerably smaller. With this in mind, he could only go with one method. Just then, Shiro firmly slammed the matches on the table, announcing to everyone that they contained 40 matches. For that day only, as a special price for the opening of his store, they could have it for only 5 bronze coins. The crowd was speechless. Then they expressed how amazing it was. One wanted to buy 10 matches, while another desperately wanted 20. Before Shiro could hand out any of the matches, he told them that the product wouldn't work when exposed to water and humidity, so they should be careful where they took them. That day, Shiro's matches sold well, but that sounded a bit like an understatement. He sold matches to around 100 people. As the day ended, Shiro told an old geezer that all the matches were sold, but he promised to give him a queue number for the next day. The old man asked what that even was, and he corrected Shiro, saying that he was only 120 years old. Shiro was stunned, not knowing how to respond. Shiro accidentally age-shamed a fossil. Later on, he lay down on his mat, exhausted from dealing with so many people. If this continued the next day, even more people would show up. Just then, he noticed that the sky had gotten cloudy. His mind then wandered elsewhere, and he wondered if he could handle it all by himself the next day. He shrugged this thought aside and convinced himself that he should be all right. He shouldn't need any flowers tomorrow, though. Elsewhere, Ina kept on selling flowers on the streets. She enthusiastically asked if anyone wanted to buy some flowers, and she noted that they were cheap. Suddenly, Shiro's voice broke through the air calling for her. Ina turned around and asked what he needed, and she was quite surprised to see Shiro. She worriedly asked about his store, so Shiro told her that he had sold all his matches and had to close the store for the day. Ina was shocked, and she thought it was incredible. Shiro asked how her business was doing, but she instinctively hid her flowers behind her. She felt embarrassed because it wasn't going well. Meanwhile, Shiro is printing money with sticks. Suddenly her eyes began to water and she wondered why her flowers weren't selling. Worried, Shiro asked if she was all right. Ina quickly turned around to wipe her tears and she told him not to mind her. Suddenly she dashed off and told Shiro not to worry. She excused herself to sell some flowers, though Shiro asked her to wait. Before she could disappear, Shiro held her hand, pleading with her to listen to his words for just a moment. Ina was surprised, so she stayed to hear him out. Soon after, Ina let out a sound of pure confusion. She asked what he had just said, so Shiro repeated himself. He was wondering if she wanted to help him at his shop. He solved her problems with minimum wage. Ina wondered if he was really okay with her helping, but Shiro told her not to be like that. It was precisely because she was Ina that he specifically wanted her help, and of course she would get paid for doing so. Ina was stunned into silence, but she mustered the courage to say that she would do it. She wanted to work at Shiro's shop, and there was no way that she wouldn't. Shiro thanked Ina, but she argued that he didn't have to say that. She awkwardly held his hand, telling him that she was no good at selling, and none of her flowers had even gotten sold. Because of that, she really had to thank him. Shiro heard so many humble thanks coming out of Ina's mouth, and his heart was so moved that he swore to work hard. He knew he had to work at full force at the store tomorrow. Shiro asked Ina if he would be seeing her tomorrow, and she confirmed it. Not long after, they bid each other goodbye, and they soon parted ways. When he was finally alone, Shiro quickly hid in an alley. He was relieved that the coast was clear as he didn't want to get caught. Suddenly, he muttered the words, "Open Sesame," and the portal to his grandma's home in Japan opened before him. Bro could have thought of a better password. Apparently, this portal was connected to his closet, and it could be summoned anywhere just by thinking about it. He could only hope that no one would start making any innuendos about it. Finally, it was time for him to go home. Shiro simply jumped into the portal, and he soon found himself back in his grandma's house. As soon as he got settled, he took out the silver and copper coins that he earned that day. He used the equivalent exchange skills, and like clockwork, the coins turned into Japanese yen. He calculated his earnings for the day, and the total shocked him. He couldn't believe it, and it even scared him. Compared to his monthly salary back in that dead-end job, the sale of the matches came close, and he was only open for an hour. If this all went well, living as a NEET for the rest of his life could be an actual possibility. Bro's thinking of retirement after receiving his first paycheck. However, instead of talking about idle dreams, he decided to start making his preparations for the next day. Shortly after, Shiro headed to the grocery store. As he strolled around with a shopping cart, he tried to locate the matches, which were usually kept in a certain part of the store. Finally, he found the product, and to his surprise, it was a variety called Survival Match, and it was wind and water resistant. He wondered what on earth this was because he didn't even know that they existed. He thought he must have been blind not to have seen them before. He found premium loot in aisle 3. He immediately hoarded a bunch of the survival matches, knowing he was going to make an absolute stinking profit out of those adventurers. He filled up his cart, and he hoped it was enough. After that, Shiro headed to the counter to pay for the matches. The cashier felt alarmed by everything that Shiro bought, and he wondered what kind of arsonist he was serving. At that moment, Shiro thought it was safe to say that he didn't think this through. There was no way that he could carry all of those home. Suddenly he remembered something. He might just use the equivalent exchange skill. After that, Shiro took the carts and bags filled with matches, and he headed to a secluded part of the parking lot. There he closed his eyes and muttered the words spatial storage. To his surprise, an eye-shaped portal appeared out of thin air. Biblically accurate storage unit. Shiro was stunned by the sight of it, but he couldn't stop there. One by one, he started tossing the matches into the eye-shaped portal. Soon after, he tossed entire carts into it to finish his task faster. Shiro screamed in victory, overjoyed that he had his very own pocket dimension. He had to lug around all those matches in his bag yesterday, and thanks to his old job, his back was in a real sorry state. However, there was no way on earth that he could have used the same bag for the amount of matches he had just bought. Suddenly, numbers started showing on his screen, making him wonder what it was about. He could see all the information about the items he stored in the spatial storage. If Shiro was being honest, those abilities were getting scarily powerful. He was now starting to wonder what his grandma was doing to get those. Just then, Shiro grinned because he never had to carry anything ever again. He looked at his hand, knowing this power wasn't natural at all. However, he chose to ignore that. He planned to sell matches at the market for the next 4 days, and after that, he would decide his next step. With his powers, he declared that he would be a very rich man. Suddenly, a little girl and her mother happened to pass by Shiro. The girl pointed at him, telling her mother that the strange man from the store was talking to himself again. However, the girl's mother told her not to point her fingers at strangers because she didn't know where they had been. Shiro froze, and he decided to quickly shut up and return home to prepare for the next day. Talking to yourself is fine until witnesses spawn. The next day, Aina informed her mother that she would now be leaving. Her sickly mother hoped that she would have a nice day, but then she asked if Aina wasn't taking the flowers with her. Aina smiled and said no. Then she shared that she would be helping Shiro. Meanwhile, Shiro spoke to his grandma's picture on the altar, letting her know that he would now be heading out. Afterward, he turned to face the portal before him and stepped forward without hesitation. The moment he entered the other world, he felt eager to finally get started. Shortly after, Shiro saw Aina from afar, and he called out to her. She greeted him with a good morning, and he returned the favor. He hoped he didn't make her wait long, but Aina reassured him that she had just gotten there. Shiro playfully asked if that was really the truth, so Aina admitted that she had waited for a little while. After all, the customers were already there. To Shiro's surprise, the entire alley where his store was located was filled with desperate customers. Nobody said it was Black Friday. He was shocked, wondering how there were so many already. Aina was excited and said that they should do their best, while Shiro anxiously asked her to wait. He hurriedly opened his bag because he still had to set everything up. Suddenly, he caught sight of just how many customers there were, and he started to worry. They were even blocking the nearby street shops. Shiro thought this was bad, and he knew it well because he was once a former corporate slave. He predicted that this could lead to trouble. Suddenly, someone told Shiro that he had a great line, so he immediately apologized and promised to organize it right away. Just then, he recognized the person talking to him. It was the Lord of the Rotisserie. The rotisserie man heard rumors about this new item called a match, and he couldn't believe it was Shiro all along. Suddenly, the rotisserie man asked if something had gone wrong because he seemed rather swamped with customers. Overwhelmed, Shiro explained everything to the man. After hearing Shiro's story, the rotisserie man agreed that it truly was an issue. The woman accompanying him remarked that if that was the case, then they had their stall on the outskirts of the town, and they could let Shiro use it free of charge for that day. It also meant he could stop bothering the other stalls. Shiro asked if she was sure, and the woman confirmed it and told him not to sweat it because it was their day off anyway. Shiro stuttered, and he thanked the woman and the rotisserie man. Just then, he asked the rotisserie man if the woman was his wife, but it turned out that she was his sister. Shiro was stunned as he saw no resemblance at all. Brother got nerfed in the womb, and so Shiro and Aina followed the rotisserie siblings to the location of the stall. Not long after, they finally saw it with their own eyes. Shiro and Aina felt hyped, and they immediately got started. Shiro began by orienting Aina, and he reminded her one more time that when he would say S, she should pass him the little one, and if he said B, she should pass him the big one. He reminded her not to forget that they also had the survival matches. Though Aina seemed out of it, she reassured Shiro that he could leave it to her. Concerned, Shiro asked if she was okay because she seemed a little nervous. After that, they finally opened their store. Shiro apologized to the long line of eager customers for the delay, but he reassured them that they would now be opening for the day. To start off, he called those who had priority tickets to come to the front of the line. Shortly after, he told Aina to give him 3S and 2B. Before she could even get to that, he gave her another order for 5S and 1B. Aina was so startled that she ended up dropping the matches. Additionally, she was too tiny to reach the stall, so she always ended up apologizing for the delay. Dude, this is literally child labor. Suddenly, Shiro told her to fetch 4 survival matches, and he also checked on her to see if she was good. Despite being anxious, Aina apologized and said that she was okay. In the middle of the chaos, Aina paused for a moment, realizing how amazing this was. The matches sold out in the blink of an eye. Shiro tended to customers left and right, proving just how the matches were selling at a crazy speed. Aina's eyes lit up with excitement, and she wondered if this was the hidden joy of trading. Not long after, they were once again sold out. Aina asked if they seriously sold everything, and he confirmed it and thanked her for her help. Shiro also thanked the rotisserie siblings, and they happily said no problem. After that, he calculated all their sales, and he couldn't believe the results. He thought there was no way it was possible. Yesterday, he thought he could earn 200,000 per hour, but after only 3 hours, he got around 1.5 million. That was almost 490,000 yen an hour. Shiro felt dazed at the thought of it, and he now wondered if this was what millionaires earned. Knowing the amount he had, he decided that he had to get a move on before someone could have any bright ideas. He packed the coins in his backpack, but he failed to realize that it would all be too heavy for his back. The weight of the coins almost caused him to break his spine. Capitalism weighed him down literally. He thought about using his pocket dimension, but he believed that using it in front of other people was a bad idea. With his head planted upside down on the ground, he admitted that this wasn't going to work. Just then, Shiro handed a pouch of coins to Aina, telling her that it was her pay for the day. Aina bowed with humility, thanking Shiro. Shiro suggested using the money to buy something nice for her mother, and he commended her for being a great help that day. However, Aina argued that she should be the one to thank him for letting her work. She wanted to express her gratitude further, but Shiro interjected and told her to stop saying this thank you nonsense. He insisted that she was the one who helped him. This annoyed Aina, and she complained about wanting to thank him. Her reaction amused Shiro, and he ended up laughing. Aina had no choice but to yield, so she let out an exasperated sigh. Just then, Shiro remembered that they hadn't taken a break all day, so he suggested having a quick bite to eat. He rummaged through his bag and presented Aina with sandwiches from Japan, which immediately bewitched her. She curiously asked if it was bread, and Shiro replied that it was a sandwich to be precise. Aina's mouth watered, as it was her first time seeing bread so white. Without wasting time, she took a big bite of the sandwich, and she raved about how amazingly good it was. She tasted mayo and ascended. Shiro asked if it really was, but he was glad she thought so. As they ate beside the stall, a woman suddenly approached them, asking if they minded if she took a minute of their time. Shiro asked if she was talking to him, and she confirmed it. The woman heard that someone was selling some new items called matches in the town, and she assumed Shiro was the seller. Shiro confirmed that he was, but he was sorry to tell her that the item she was looking for had been sold out for the day. Suddenly, the woman revealed that she didn't come to buy matches. She came to see Shiro. The woman introduced herself as Karen Sankareka, the mayor of the town. He accidentally summoned the government. Shiro couldn't believe that a woman was the mayor of Ninorich. He thought there was no way that such a young and beautiful woman would have such a title, as he was expecting someone like a buff guy with a mustache. Turns out leadership doesn't require facial hair. Shiro anxiously asked what the mayor wanted with him, so Karen started by expressing her gratitude. For a merchant of his caliber, she was thankful that he was doing business in her town. She bowed to express her sincerity, which quickly made Shiro embarrassed. He argued that he should be the one thanking her for letting him do business. This reaction confused Karen, as he seemed to have a pretty low self-esteem. Most merchants in her town were stubborn, which was a fact that surprised Shiro. Suddenly, Karen raised her voice asking if he would help her. And so for the rest of the afternoon, Karen ended up voicing her dilemma to Shiro. While Aina slept with her belly full, Karen told Shiro that the town was in the middle of nowhere. The merchants all had the attitude of "I'm just carrying a load," and the goods the town needed were sold at high prices. Their products were sold at very low prices, and because of that, their finances were not getting any better. It was a mess, and Karen hoped that somebody would do something about this inexcusable situation. Karen continued her loud monologue, declaring that she wanted to break through this situation. In this town, they needed a market. She's been holding this in for years. Suddenly, Karen realized that she was getting too absorbed in her character, so she quickly changed her tone. She moved on to her next point with a refreshing voice, making Shiro wonder if she was kidding. Just then, she presented a key, and she told Shiro that he could have it if he wanted. Shiro was puzzled, and he could only hope that it wasn't a duplicate of her house keys. However, he knew this was far from a romantic drama. Then, as if she read his mind, Karen revealed that it was a key to her house. "Ma'am, this is not a dating sim. Shiro was so baffled that he ended up choking on his own saliva. Karen asked what was wrong, so Shiro immediately said that it was nothing. Aina, on the other hand, had a look of disbelief plastered on her face. Suddenly, she revealed her realization. The mayor wanted to live with Shiro. Shiro frantically asked what she was saying, so Aina explained that it was that thing. The mayor wanted to marry him. She skipped 10 plot chapters. Karen was taken aback, and she clarified that Aina was wrong. It was not like she was single and searching for a marriage candidate. She got defensive and argued that it wasn't what she was thinking at all, and she even swore on it. Just then, she cleared her throat and calmed down. She went back to her topic and revealed that she came to ask Shiro a favor. Suddenly, Shiro asked if she was married, and she quickly denied it. I swear Shiro has 2 brain cells and they're fighting each other. Karen then pointed to the horizon, saying that there was an empty house over there that he could enter with the key. Starting tomorrow, she wanted him to do business in the store on the 1st floor. Shiro asked why, so Karen explained that the previous day, she received complaints from other merchants. They couldn't sell anything if people lined up in the middle of the market like that. Hearing this, Shiro suddenly felt guilty. Karen thought that he must have noticed. So Shiro confessed the truth. He admitted that it was tough to continue doing business like that. Karen smiled, then she offered to show him around if he liked. He could then make a decision afterward, and so Karen took him to the building where she wanted Shiro to start selling. Shiro and Aina were stunned after seeing the place, and they weren't even sure what to do with such an amazing space. Suddenly, Shiro rambled out of nowhere and revealed that he didn't have a girlfriend. "Why would you say that?" Karen responded with the same weird energy and said that it wasn't what she wanted to hear. Shiro chuckled and said he was kidding, which made Karen pout in annoyance. She warned that he shouldn't make fun of the mayor like that. Just then, she asked why a good merchant like him wanted to do business in her town. It was a small town of about 500 people, though it was a shameful thing for a mayor to say. She knew Shiro could make more money doing business in other towns and cities. Shiro agreed that she was right, then he paused to ponder. Curious, Aina waited for what he was going to say next. Just then, Shiro guessed that it was simply because he liked it there. He'd only been in Ninorik for 3 days, but Aina put a lot of effort into working for him. There was also a mayor who was kind to him, even though he wasn't from there. It was simply because he loved the whole town. Karen was speechless, so she let Shiro continue. He was from another world and he didn't know other towns, but he was sure there weren't many towns that were as warm as this one. He unlocked the found family route. Suddenly, Karen's eyes started to water as she thanked him for telling her that he loved the town. Shiro was worried about her reaction, but to make matters worse, Karen started crying. Aina panicked and she called out Shiro for making a girl cry. He immediately apologized to the mayor and he explained that he didn't mean to. Suddenly, Karen held out her hand, insisting that he call her just Karen. Shiro took her hand and said that she could also call him Shiro. Aina also joined in and introduced herself to Karen. As Karen and Shiro shook hands, Aina also slapped her hand over theirs. This is legally binding in anime law. This was how this young man from selling matches got his own store within 3 days of arrival in the other world. He was sure that his grandma was making a victory pose in heaven. The next day, Shiro signed a contract for a month's store at the town hall, and he started his business immediately. 5 days later, Shiro and Aina apologized to their customers for running out of matches, just like they always did. Later that night, Shiro realized that he had sold enough matches for everyone in the town, and it was a mystery why they were still selling out. He broke supply and demand. Suddenly, Aina approached him, informing him that she was done cleaning up. Shiro told her goodnight and he urged her to go rest on the 2nd floor first. Aina asked if she should help him, but he reassured her that it was all good. Aina felt a bit dismayed, but she respected Shiro's wishes. After a few hours, Shiro finally finished his work and decided to bring some food up to Aina. However, he found her sleeping on the couch and he guessed that she must have fallen asleep. No shit, Sherlock. It was no wonder, as she was only 8 years old. He slowly placed the food on the table, which caused Aina to slowly open her eyes. He asked if he woke her up, but she still seemed to be in a daze. She said it was her daddy's fault, so Shiro tried telling her that he wasn't her dad. Still, Aina didn't budge. She held out her arms to Shiro, asking him to lift her up. Though he was hesitant, Shiro yielded and he took her in his arms. He wasn't sure if he was doing it right, but Aina seemed happy enough that he was finally hugging her. In her mind, he was her daddy, and she also recalled how her mom used to carry her in the same manner. Suddenly, Aina fell asleep again, surprising Shiro. As he tucked her in, he wondered if he was a father now. He then put a blanket over Aina, softly whispering to her that if there was anything she wanted, she should just say so. At that time, he would do his best to help her. The blanket tuck-in sealed it. On the 6th day of store sales, Shiro decided to give Aina a day off, despite her still wanting to work. Like always, he had to apologize to the customers because he sold out of matches. As the day ended, he slumped on his table, whining that it was hard working alone. Hustle culture finally punched him in the spine. Suddenly, someone entered the door, and it was none other than Karen. He told her that they had been sold out again, but Karen had already expected that from a skilled merchant. Shiro argued that it was different, as he was selling 5 times the number of townspeople. Just then, Karen shared that she heard a rumor that somebody resold the matches in another town, and it was a big success. The rumor would have spread and people must have started copying it. Congrats, you invented dropshipping. Hearing that, Shiro suggested setting a limit on the number of pieces one could buy. However, Karen suddenly shifted the topic and she revealed the reason for her going there. She wanted to ask Shiro a favor. It sounded important, so she wanted to go upstairs and talk about it. Later on, Shiro served her a warm cup of tea and asked what the request was. Before that, Karen asked him if he knew there was an adventurers guild in their town. Shiro confirmed that he did, and he recalled that it was called Silver Moon. Karen was surprised since she didn't realize that he already knew the name of the guild. They had a lot of adventurers as customers. The Adventurers Guild worked like an intermediate firm, and they took orders from clients and assigned them to adventurers. They were an organization that awarded success. Tasks included killing monsters that attacked livestock and people, gathering herbs and mushrooms in order to prepare medicines, and more. If Shiro already knew that, Karen thought it should be quick. Silver Moon was the only adventurers guild in their town. Just then, Karen started talking about the Guildmaster, which piqued Shiro's interest. The Guildmaster, or Gilmus, was the leader of an adventurers guild. It was a word that tickled the heart of every teenage boy. Shiro asked what was wrong with the Gilmas, which seemed to confuse Karen. Just then, she revealed that he ran away last night. Shiro was already blown away by this news, but Karen wasn't done. They also didn't have the money to run the guild. The guild said bankruptcy arc. The adventurers who belonged to the guild were about to leave the town, and there was also the issue of the guild's management funds. Hearing all that, Shiro remarked that it was a big problem. Just then, Karen revealed that she had a plan. Shiro was curious about it, so Karen went on to explain that she always had one. The Adventurers Guild in the capital wanted to set up a branch in their town. Until now, she refused out of consideration for Silver Moon, but in these circumstances, she was thinking of accepting the offer. Shiro thought they were on the brink of losing a very important asset, the adventurers. Knowing that, he thought it was the right decision. Karen smiled and she thanked him because it made her feel better to hear him say that. Just then, Shiro noticed that her breast jiggled when she turned around to face him, so he anxiously looked away. This scene is sponsored by Accidental Fan Service. After that, Karen told him that if he accepted her offer, there would be a visit from the guild in the capital soon. They were going to decide if they would formally establish a branch. With that, she told Shiro that she wanted to show those matches of his to the people coming from the capital. Shiro didn't mind, but he wondered what the point was. Karen mentioned that there was a point. She had never seen anything like those matches in her life, not even in the capital, let alone any other city. This made her wonder where the hell Shiro even got the product. Shiro struggled to answer, so Karen quickly clarified that she wasn't trying to pry. It was just that if he was the only one who could deal with it, it might be of interest to the inspectors. Shiro let out an exasperated sigh, saying that he understood her. In short, she wanted him to use the matches to attract the inspectors' attention. Bro accepted his fate as bait. Shiro could already imagine them saying that the town had unique items and that it had a special charm in comparison to other ones. It would definitely be successful. Karen was touched by his kindness, and she promised to repay this favor. The next afternoon, Shiro and Ina sold out of matches again. Ina, who was now back to work, noticed that there was something wrong with Shiro. He seemed to be absorbed in his thoughts, wondering what could be the one thing that could pique the inspector's interest. Just then, he sprang up from his seat, saying that he had finally decided. He headed for the door, and he told Ina that he would be heading to Karen's for a bit. After that, he told Karen his plan, but she nervously asked if he was serious. Shiro smiled, confirming that he was. He wanted to be an adventurer, and he wanted Karen to let him accompany the adventurers. This is what we call a career pivot. Karen clarified with Shiro if he truly wanted to accompany adventurers on quests, and if he was serious about it. Without a doubt, Shiro said yes, thinking that it was the best way for him to find out what adventurers needed. Man chose exposure therapy instead of Google. Karen asked if he knew the risks, then she mentioned that the only place an adventurer in this town would go to was the Eastern Forest. There was no place apart from that. Shiro envisioned the dangers lurking in the forest's shadows, and each of them had the potential to kill him. Despite that, he told Karen that he knew. However, he meant for it to be adventurers who gathered herbs and minerals. Karen understood now, and she was relieved because it sounded less dangerous. She wanted to introduce him to some adventurers, but if she was being honest, the relationship between her and Silver Moon was currently horrible. Last night, Silver Moon's substitute guildmaster came and they told her this: "Money, please lend us some money somehow." The substitute guildmaster kneeled on all fours while saying that, and they even cried desperately. Shiro commented that it was quite a straightforward request. Just then, he asked how much they needed, and Karen said 10. Shiro asked if it was 10 copper coins, but Karen shook her head. He again asked if she meant 10 silver coins, but still, Karen said no. To Shiro's shock, he realized that the guild wanted 10 gold coins, which was the equivalent of 10 million yen. The audacity is actually S rank. However, Shiro was being too loud, so Karen called him out for it. She knew that there wasn't even that much money in a remote town like hers. If it were a tenth of that amount, she could have at least thought about it. Shiro understood, and he saw that it would be hard to ask for help after turning down their request. Karen simply nodded in response, then she took out her quill to write a letter. However, she told Shiro not to expect anything. After that, Shiro headed toward the Adventurers Guild, Silver Moon, in the eastern part of town. As he stood outside the building, he realized that it was his first time visiting a guild, which made him a bit nervous. As soon as he opened the doors, the smell of drunk adventurers immediately greeted him. To make matters worse, someone purposely placed their foot in front of Shiro to make him trip. Unfortunately, he fell flat on his face. Suddenly, a buff adventurer named Aniki pulled Shiro by the hair, happily saying that there was new blood. He then asked where his greeting was for his seniors. Meanwhile, another adventurer laughed at Shiro, and he told Aniki to chill a little. Shiro, on the other hand, said that he wasn't a new adventurer but a merchant. This infuriated Aniki even more, and he menacingly teased Shiro for being a fancy merchant. The other adventurer got excited over this scene as he was witnessing Aniki's Kabadon moment. Just then, Aniki told Shiro that he would put a price on his punch that could crush stone. However, it turned out that this was all in Shiro's imagination. Man pre-traumatized himself. In reality, he hadn't even entered the guild yet. He convinced himself that there was no way that something like that was going to happen. With that, he placed his hand on the door and anxiously slammed it open. He frantically excused himself as he entered, but to his shock, nobody was there. Even the NPCs called in sick. Suddenly, he noticed that someone was behind the counter, and he asked who it was. The person didn't answer and instead kept on crying. Shiro slowly approached the counter and he awkwardly said that he came with a referral from the mayor. Despite trying to reach out, the person didn't respond, and they cried even harder. Seeing that, Shiro admitted that this wasn't going to work. Just then, he slightly shook the person's shoulder, telling them that he only needed a little bit of their time. Suddenly, the person looked back at Shiro, revealing herself to be a demi-human girl. Just then, it dawned on her that someone had noticed her whole meltdown, so she anxiously asked how long he had been there. Shiro, on the other hand, wondered if she was a guild staff member because she was wearing a uniform. Suddenly, the girl asked why he was touching her, so Shiro quickly took his hand away. Frantic, the girl asked if he liked her. Then she warned him that with one word from her, the poster girl of Silver Moon, she could summon 1,000 muscular men. Though it might sound rude, Shiro broke it to her that there was no one in the building. This guild is held together by delusion. The girl retorted that once in a while there was, but even then she alone was enough to beat him up. She clenched her fist, angrily saying that her punch could crush stone. She desperately didn't want Shiro to look down on her. Shiro sighed, knowing this girl was about to be a real pain in the ass. Just then, he asked where he could find the substitute guildmaster. That was what was important. He requested the girl to call them for him. The girl said that she could, but she was hesitant to continue. Shiro urged her to speak, so she admitted that she was the substitute guildmaster. She's the manager, staff, and janitor. Shiro was so blown away by this news that his confusion could be heard from outside. The reason why the girl called Emile the substitute guildmaster for the guild Silver Moon was rather simple. There was no guild staff apart from her. Actually, there was one other young girl, but the day after the guildmaster ran away, she disappeared for some reason. Later that night, Emile drank a bottle of booze while sharing with Shiro that those bastards were having an affair. She claimed that they didn't know that she was aware of it. Being drunk, Emile demonstrated how they were kissing here and there. She even revealed that they were doing something intimate in the guildmaster's room. She shared everything in complete detail and wondered how one could tolerate that. Girl turned into a live-streamed exposé. Saying all this infuriated her, and she hoped they got caught by bandits, stripped of all they owned, beaten to a pulp, and sold to slave merchants for 5 coppers or something. The two of them as a set, that is. She pressed on, sharing that the guildmaster stank like a horny goblin. This roast was personal. Just then, Shiro interjected, saying that she really did her best. However, he had enough of all the venting, so he asked if she was done yet. Suddenly, Emile remarked that he listened to her grumbling for a whole 5 hours. She complimented him for his kindness, all while she was slowly unbuttoning her blouse. This made Shiro panic, so he asked why she was doing that. Emile quickly apologized, then she asked if he had something to do. Just then, Shiro handed her a letter from the mayor, which somehow struck Emile's nerve. She angrily asked if it was the same stupid big-breasted bitch mayor. Hearing that, Shiro wondered if his grandma's ring had malfunctioned. Not the Duolingo error. He claimed that he didn't know what she was talking about, and he clarified that he was referring to the mayor of Ninorik, Karen. Just then, Emile asked if he was talking about the one where all the nutrition for her brain went straight to her tits. Once again, she asked if it was that Karen, the most cruel woman. If that was the letter of that woman, then she thought tearing it up was fine. Diplomacy failed instantly. She thought stuff like affairs and adultery were just the worst. As Emile tore the letter without mercy, Shiro could do nothing but freak out. Emile continued complaining about that shitty woman Karen. She discarded Silver Moon and invited some other adventurer guild. She believed Karen was an extremely immoral mayor bitch, and she asked Shiro if he agreed. Meanwhile, Karen, who had no idea Emile was trash-talking her, suddenly sneezed out of nowhere. Karen catching generational slander. Emile whined that Karen wouldn't lend her a measly 10 coins, though she did a dojiza. However, Shiro mentioned that 10 gold coins were a lot of money, and Karen also had her own share of worries. Furious, Emile called him out for having that stupid woman's back. She asked Shiro if he liked her or something, then she started crying, wanting to confess something. With tears in her eyes, she screamed that she still loved Karen and she thought they were still best friends. Plot twist just slapped us. Suddenly, Shiro told her that she shouldn't insult other people, especially her best friends. Emile broke down, saying that the guild was doomed without money. She didn't know what to do at that point. Shiro understood Emile's relationship with the mayor now, but he asked to let the matter about the letter slide. Just then, he grabbed something from his wallet and handed a handkerchief to Emile. Emotional intelligence unlocked. He told her that he had a commission for the Silver Moon Adventurer Guild. Emile collected herself, then put on her hat, asking how she could help him. Later that night, she learned that Shiro wished to accompany an adventurer. If that was what he wanted, then she would make it an escort request. But there wasn't really a precedent for it. Shiro asked if it was difficult to do, and Emile said that she could only really think of one qualified party. It was a high-rank party consisting of 4 members, so the fee would be quite expensive. The name of the party was Azure Flash. Aina asked if he was really going to close the store for a while, and he confirmed it. He thought it would be about 3 days, and during that time he would go play Pretend Adventurer for a bit. Aina got it, and she shared that there was also stuff that she wanted to do. She was a little relieved that the store was closed for a bit. This made Shiro curious, but Aina said it was nothing important. He didn't pry any further, and instead he tied his shoelaces and bid her goodbye. But before he could leave, Aina told him to take care. And with that, Shiro went off to start a new adventure. After that, he headed to the Silver Moon Guild. He excused himself as he opened the door, but before he could enter, Emile greeted him. She said she had been waiting for him, and she told him to hurry up and come inside. Shiro awkwardly muttered her name, but he was still traumatized from their previous encounter. Shiro's PTSD activated instantly. Emile asked what he was scared of. Then she reassured him that she wasn't going to eat him up or anything. With that, Emile gestured for him to enter because she wanted to introduce him immediately to Silver Moon's Pride, the silver-ranked party. They would accompany Shiro on his mission to collect high-class herbs this time. As soon as Shiro caught sight of the party members of Azure Flash, he couldn't help but be amazed. Emile was about to introduce the leader, but he stood up and said it was him. The leader called out to Shiro, saying that it had been a while. Shiro stared at him, wondering where he had seen him before. Just then, he realized that it was the first guy who bought matches from him. The leader was relieved, realizing that Shiro seemed to remember him now. This man was the leader, Liar, and he wanted to introduce him to his companions. Their resident priest was a big guy named Rolf, and he was pleased to meet Shiro. He may be a priest, but he was a war priest who swung his mace around. Faith-powered violence. He was normally like that, but Liar warned Shiro not to make him angry. Next was their magician, Neska. She only stared at Shiro, but when Liar urged her to greet him, she hesitantly mumbled in response. Neska barely spoke, but she was good with magic. Liar playfully teased that her chanting was a bit slow, so Neska bonked his head with her staff and told him to mind his own business. Liar said that he would if she chanted faster, but Neska only turned away and said she'd think about it. Liar was about to introduce their next member, but she disappeared when he was about to gesture to her. Suddenly, she appeared in front of Shiro, enthusiastically saying that her name was Kilfa. That entrance had flair. Shiro was stunned upon seeing her ears, and he asked if she was from the cat race. Kilfa thought it was a weird response, as a lot of awful people out there disliked the cat race. This also included other missioners. Shiro wondered how they could hate cats or such a cute race, which instantly made Kilfa blush. Just then, Liar told him that Kilfa was their ranger and she scouts and finds traps and the like. Kilfa was proud of it and even boasted that she fought with a dagger and a bow. Shiro remarked that it was amazing, which only made Kilfa laugh because he hadn't seen anything yet. Liar suddenly revealed that what she was best at was running away, so Kilfa told him not to say that. After introducing the members, Liar suggested that they depart immediately. He asked Shiro if he was prepared and resolved for it, and he confirmed that he was. Liar thought it was a good answer, so with that they set off for the eastern forest. Elsewhere, Aina walked through town until she reached a mysterious pub. She awkwardly announced her arrival, which quickly got the attention of the man at the bar. He noticed that it was the little Missy from the other day. Just then he slowly reached out for her face like promised. Sis was doing underage side quests. As the Azure Flash party entered the eastern forest, Lyre told Shiro to relax because they would be avoiding monsters as much as possible. Shiro was a bit nervous, but he thanked Lyre. Just then, Lyre remarked that the herbs weren't easy to find. Kilfa proudly shared that if it were herbs, then she had found a ton. However, Rolf told her that they weren't after the regular herbs but the high-class ones. When they found those, their request from the guild would certainly be completed. However, it couldn't be denied that they were far from that reality. Nesca agreed with that, and to make matters worse, it was about to get dark soon. Lyre hummed to relax himself, then he said that it couldn't be helped. He told the group to stop there for the day, which surprised Shiro because it was too soon. Because of that, Lyre told him the long-standing rule: if you have leeway, rest your body. Shiro teared up at what he said because he wanted to hear those words from his previous boss. His old boss catching strays from another dimension. Meanwhile, Lyre told the others to prepare to make camp. Later that night, Kilfa announced that she had gathered firewood along with Shiro. With that, they lit up a fire using the matches. As they sat down to enjoy the warmth, Lyre remarked that the matches were really nice. Rolf was thankful to Shiro, and he thanked him for his patronage. Suddenly, Lyre playfully suggested that he would make a killing if he sold them in the royal capital. Rolf agreed, but if the infamous merchant association in the capital got word of it, he would be in for trouble. Just then, Lyre teased that Rolf was always right, including his predictions. Kilfa nodded in agreement while Shiro asked if it was really true. Suddenly, Nesca's stomach rumbled, and she told Lyre that she was hungry. Lyre admitted that they had been walking the whole day, so he decided to get to eating. Shortly after, Shiro observed Nesca eating a huge loaf of bread. That bread definitely fights back. That night he noticed that the party had eaten dried meat and that hard-looking bread. Even adventurers who mainly spent their time in the wild lived off rather simple meals. Just then, Kilfa asked Shiro if he didn't have any food. He seemed confused, so she tore up some of her food and handed it to him. However, Shiro told her he was fine because he brought something with him. As soon as he took out the contents of his bag, the entire party was blown away by what they saw. They asked what in the world those state-of-the-art containers were that he pulled out. They stuttered, unable to believe that it was food. Unbeknownst to them, these were non-perishable goods that Shiro brought from Japan. The forest was not ready for globalization. Lyre hesitantly asked if he could eat it all by himself, but Shiro said no, he brought enough for everybody. The party seemed confused, so he explained that the items were all contenders for new products at his store. He thought they could all give him their impressions. After hearing that, the group suddenly fell silent. Just then, they erupted in cheers, realizing that Shiro wanted a food sampling party. The group wasted no time slurping and munching away. Lyre asked what this food was because it was so good, while Kilfa screamed that it was so tasty. Even a priest like Rolf couldn't resist. Nesca, on the other hand, drooled over the taste of sweet and tasty chocolate. And thus, the sudden food sampling party ended with all 4 people giving feedback. So tasty. Shortly after, Kilfa lay on the ground with her round belly, saying that she was so full. Kilfa unlocked Food Coma speedrun. Kilfa was feeling a bit dazed, sharing that she had committed the taste of chocolate to her memory. Rolf, on the other hand, was crying because he believed this must be God's plan. God works through packaging. The entire group was lost in their own worlds, unable to process the aftermath of eating such good food. Just then, Lyre approached Shiro, telling him that he should sleep. He reminded him that they would take care of the watch. Shiro chuckled and said that he wasn't used to going to bed that early, so Lyre decided to accompany him. He suggested talking instead. As the night went on, Shiro learned that adventurers didn't use sleeping bags because they made it hard to move. However, it was cold in the winter and they could freeze to death with just a blanket. And if they brought more blankets, it would also increase their luggage. Lyre sighed, realizing that in moments like that, he wished he had a spatial storage skill. Shiro was sipping tea while he said that, and he accidentally spat it out. Shiro encouraged him to share more, and Lyre thought that he should know what it felt like because he was a merchant. It was said that between 1 and 10,000 or 100,000 had that skill. They also said that in some dungeon of an ancient civilization there was supposed to be a spatial storage skill book. As Lyre spoke about it, Shiro wanted to say that he had it. Just then he asked how much it would be worth if it were found. This surprised Lyre because Shiro was a merchant himself, but he was asking him. Still, he made a rough guess. If it could hold a horse cart's amount, it would be enough to buy a noble's mansion. Shiro was stunned, realizing that it would be that much. It was probably worth more than one could earn in a lifetime. At that moment, Shiro was glad that he kept it a secret. He wanted to test how much it could hold later. Shiro's poker face fighting for its life. Just then, Shiro told Lyre that he finally felt sleepy, so he excused himself. Lyre understood, and he told him he'd wake him up in the morning. Then out of nowhere, Lyre took out his sword and pointed it behind him. Shiro wondered why he did that, but Liar shushed him. Liar called for Kilfa and Rolf to wake up while he told Shiro to wake up Nesca. There was a presence approaching and he alerted the group to prepare for an attack. It was a monster. The monster's timing is diabolical. Shiro tried to wake Nesca, but she was too deep in her sleep, dreaming of chocolates. Worried, he told her to stop dreaming of chocolates because there was an emergency. She said 5 more minutes to death. Meanwhile, Kilfa focused on sniffing out the threat. Liar asked if she knew what it was, but she said it was no use. It seemed to come from downwind and she couldn't pick up a scent at all. In that case, Rolf thought they might be dealing with a rather intelligent monster. Just then, Liar told Nesca to hurry and prepare a magic attack. However, before Nesca could even gain full consciousness, something appeared before them. Liar was stunned, seeing the massive beast. He cursed under his breath because they were dealing with this of all things. It had to be a murder grizzly. Silver rank adventurers like them couldn't win against it, so he wanted to just turn and run. Silver rank? More like silver platter. Rolf thought it was impossible because only Kilfa, who was from the cat race, could get away. Kilfa promised that she wouldn't leave them there, but Rolf told her that they couldn't win, even if they fought. Just then, the murder grizzly stomped its massive foot, ready to attack the group. Liar wondered what they should do, so Rolf recommended that someone had to be made the bait. Liar was stunned, realizing that it was the case. Meanwhile, the rest of the group remained silent, waiting for his decision. Shiro, on the other hand, gave himself a hypothetical quiz. Of the following options, who was the most suitable to be made the bait? A. Him, Amata Shiro, B. Him, who only met Azure Flash that day. Or C. Him, the only non-adventurer who was almost a complete stranger. The answer was him, no matter how one thought about it. He mentally signed his own death waiver. Just then, Liar approached him, confirming the thoughts in his mind. When he saw their pale expressions, he somehow understood. Liar meant to offer him death, and it went without saying what his next words would be. In his head, he already imagined Liar telling him that he had to be the bait for the sake of the group. However, that wasn't what happened. Liar told him to run away together with Kilfa and Nesca. He and Rolf would keep it busy there. Liar apologized to Rolf, but Rolf told him not to worry because they were longtime friends. Shiro was at a loss for words and he could only mutter their names. Just then, Nesca insisted on fighting too, but Liar told her she was slow and would just be weighing them down. Nesca huffed in annoyance, but then Liar told her that he at least wanted to act cool in front of the woman he loved in the end. He asked her to understand, but this only embarrassed Nesca. Bro made sure to shoot his shot before getting deleted. Suddenly, Liar readied his sword. He told Rolf to prepare healing magic and pray that he wouldn't get killed in one hit. When he went all out, he wanted everyone to just run. Suddenly, Nesca alerted everyone to look behind them. Liar's eyes widened in shock, unable to believe the situation they were in. Just then, birds flew from the nearby trees, signaling the impending danger. To the group's horror, there were 2 murder grizzlies. Double it and give it to the next party. Nesca froze at the sight of the bear roaring at her in fury. Liar alerted Kilfa and Nesca to run, while Rolf reassured him that he and Liar would hold the line. However, Nesca knew it was impossible, and she accepted that they would die that day. As they were on the verge of death, Shiro remembered his grandmother's words. He quickly rummaged through his bag, certain that the item he was looking for was there. Finally, he found it. His grandmother once told him that no matter how dire the situation was, you should never give up. Just then, Shiro took out a bunch of firecrackers from his bag, throwing them at one of the bears. Industrial Revolution moment. The rest of the group was shocked, unable to process what he had just done. Having already dealt with the other bear, Shiro moved on to the next one. He took out a bear repellent spray, telling the massive beast that it should regret ever appearing in front of him. With that, he fired the spray into the bear's eyes. The group was stuck in between 2 murder grizzlies and they accepted their imminent death. Just then, Shiro suddenly stepped forward, a reckless move that immediately alarmed Liar. Without a trace of fear, Shiro locked his gaze onto the massive beast towering over him. Liar urgently asked what he was doing, telling him to hurry up and run away while he still could. Instead of retreating, Shiro forcefully hurled a bundle of firecrackers straight at the bear. Caught completely off guard, the beast staggered, its massive body knocked off balance by the unexpected explosion. The rest of the group could only stare in shock at what they were witnessing. Shiro, however, had already anticipated this reaction, believing the firecrackers would at least make the grizzly flinch and back away. Just then, he called out to the murder grizzly, telling it that it would regret ever appearing in front of him. Suddenly, he fired the bear repellent spray at the other grizzly. The creature let out a pained groan, screaming as its eyes burned from the intense sensation. At that moment, the first grizzly suddenly appeared behind Shiro, prompting Liar to quickly warn him. As the massive beast reached out to strike, Shiro calmly spun around and sprayed the repellent directly into its eyes as well. Bro was so unbothered by the surprise attack. It screamed in pain and now both of the bears were in agony. Shiro was stunned, realizing just how effective the spray was. He wondered if he had just gotten a critical hit. Just then, Liar approached him, asking whether he had just used magic. Shiro quickly clarified that he hadn't, then went on to show Liar the item he had used instead. He explained that it contained a poisonous mist, and that all he had done was spray it into the air. Even after hearing that, Liar still couldn't fully understand how it worked. Without wasting time, Shiro urged everyone to run while they still had the chance to escape. However, Liar stopped him and calmly asked whether the bear's eyes and noses had been covered by the spray. When Shiro replied that that was exactly the point, Liar's expression shifted. He suggested that as adventurers, they couldn't let this chance slip. The moment those words were spoken, the members of Azure Flash immediately understood what needed to be done. This was their chance for revenge. Without a second of hesitation, they launched a relentless barrage of attacks toward the Murder Grizzlies, moving in all at once. Murder Grizzlies, more like murdered grizzlies. Having the upper hand, they successfully defeated the beasts. After that, Liar told everyone that they had to hurry up and dismantle them. Nesca complained that it was too troublesome, which instantly got her into an argument with Liar. Just then, Shiro remembered that Liar mentioned that he liked Nesca. The two were stunned by his comment and they instinctively turned red. Anxious, they pretended not to know what Shiro was talking about. Shiro didn't let the issue go, and he mentioned how Liar said something like, the girl he loved. This man does not read the room. Not wanting to deal with it further, Liar suggested that they focus on cutting up the bear instead. All the various parts taken from the murder grizzlies were clearly worth a great deal, so for that reason, everyone worked carefully as they dismantled the massive beasts. Liar tore off the skin. Nesca extracted the blood into a leather bag and froze it with ice magic, and Kilfa focused on the fangs. Now that the skin was off, next came the claws. At that moment, Kilfa casually asked what they should do with the grizzly's balls. Shiro froze in confusion, clearly not understanding the question at first, until Rolf stepped in to explain that the testicles were actually valuable as a medicinal ingredient. Without hesitation, Rolf told Kilfa to cut them off. Bear got nerfed post-mortem. Hearing this, Shiro was utterly horrified and instinctively clutched his crotch. Not long after that, Liar commented that they were finally finished, noting that they couldn't carry any more materials than they already had. Just then, he told Shiro that he wanted him to hear about something. He apologized because they had to put the quest on hold and return to town the next day. He advised Shiro to sell the materials as soon as possible before they started to rot, pointing out that they were far more valuable than even high-class herbs. Just then, he pointed to one of the grizzly's parts, saying that half of those was his cut. Shiro was surprised that they were giving him that much, but Liar thought it was only natural. They would have been annihilated without that item of his. Liar picked up the bear repellent spray, asking how much it was worth. However, Shiro told him not to mind it because they couldn't put a price on human life after all. Liar was surprised, and he remarked that Shiro was too nice. Suddenly, Kilfa sneaked up behind Shiro. Then she jumped at him, saying that he was a good person and that she loved him. However, Shiro was quick to avoid the surprise hug, so Kilfa ended up crashing into a nearby bush. Her feline reflexes betrayed her. Just then, Nesca told Shiro that he was a good person. Rolf also chimed in, saying that if all merchants in the world were like him, the world would be a better place. Shiro awkwardly laughed, thinking they were all too much. Just then, Shiro told Liar that he understood why he wanted to return to town. He then volunteered to carry the grizzly bear materials for him, which left everyone confused. Liar chuckled and teased Shiro because of his thin hands, and he was about to refuse the offer. However, Shiro suddenly held out his palm, summoning his spatial storage skill. As expected, the group's jaws met the floor. This man was holding endgame loot. Shiro apologized for not telling them sooner, explaining that he possessed the spatial storage skill. Liar told him there was no need to apologize because he saved their lives. After that, Shiro gathered his belongings and urged the group to head back to Ninorich. This suggestion confused Liar, who asked what Shiro was talking about. If Shiro could store the bears using spatial storage, then the obvious next step would be to continue searching for high-class herbs. Shiro was momentarily puzzled by the response, but in the end, he went along with it and continued the adventure with them for the next 2 days. After finding the herbs, they finally went back to town, where Aina greeted Shiro with a huge smile. Liar wondered if she was Shiro's daughter, but Shiro explained that it was nothing like that. She simply helped him out at the store. Wrong genre, pal. Liar then introduced himself to Aina and he was pleased to meet her. Shiro had given Aina the key to the store and had her wait there. After that, they headed to the Silver Moon to finalize the quest. As soon as Liar announced their arrival, they were greeted with an alarming sight. Emile was kneeling on the floor, begging a mysterious man to give her a little more time to get his money. Shiro, on the other hand, wondered if it was supposed to be like that. Most of all, he wondered what it even was. The man brought up that Emile had been saying she would pay it back next time again and again for half a year already. Because of that, he wouldn't allow it again this time. Bro probably wakes up hearing next month in his nightmares. Emil cried hysterically, promising the man that she would somehow have it by next month. As Emil continued to plead with the man, Shiro asked Liar who the man was, to which he replied that he was a materials merchant. Watching the tense exchange drag on, Shiro eventually decided to step in. He approached the man and politely introduced himself as a merchant who conducted business in the town. The man returned the courtesy and introduced himself as well. Shiro then asked if he could hear what the issue was about. Seeing no harm in it, the materials merchant agreed and began explaining the situation. The situation was like this. Gerald was an old acquaintance of the guildmaster, Blotto, who was currently absent or had run away. The guild had insufficient funds, so he lent them 10 gold coins with Silver Moon's guild building as collateral. Gerald presented the contract in question and he asked Emil if she understood. Emil struggled to admit the truth, so Gerald stated it plainly. If he didn't get his money, then the building would become his property. The guild is about to become a Starbucks location. The place, the land included, would barely cover it, but it would probably be enough to pay the debt if they sold it. With that, he told Emil to get the title deed. However, Emil simply shrugged, saying that she didn't want to. Suddenly, Gerald asked why she had such loyalty for Blotto, who had abandoned her. It would probably be better for her if she just let the dead-end guild go. However, Emil replied that it was nothing like loyalty. That place, Silver Moon, was where she, who was scorned just for being a beastman, had found a place she longed for the first time. It was filled with happy and sad memories, but the happy ones outnumbered the sad ones by just a bit. Because of that, it was important to her, and that was why she really didn't want to lose it. She rolled a critical hit on sympathy. Shiro fell silent as he listened to her story, seemingly touched by the part where Emil found a place filled with memories. If he recalled it correctly, it was 5 years ago in summer. Shiro's mother told him that it had already been 2 years since his grandma Mio had disappeared, and she suggested selling the house. Shiro didn't remember all the details, but when he heard those words, he had been begging as if his life depended on it. His head met the floor, asking for the house to be spared. He told them not to sell the house, which was filled with memories of his grandma. He could vividly remember how embarrassing it was to do it in front of so many relatives. Suddenly, Shiro stepped out of the guild without saying anything else. Liar tried calling out to him in the corner, but he kept right on going. This man left like he had to consult the writers. Just then, Gerald told Emil that he respected her personal reasons, but a contract was a contract. Emil knew that, so with a heavy heart she handed him the title deed for Silver Moon's guild building. However, before things could be finalized, Shiro stopped them. Confused, Emil turned to him for an explanation. Just then, Shiro asked if she would buy the item in his hand. Gerald was stunned, seeing that he was holding murder grizzly materials. Judging by the color, it was even a subspecies. Gerald asked if he would allow the materials to be bought by him, but Shiro said no, as it was only for Silver Moon. The merchant went from debt collector to eBay reseller. Emil was puzzled because the guild couldn't pay, so Shiro reassured her that she could pay him anytime. Liar scratched his head, knowing that he had to do something too. He approached Emil, telling her that they had the same amount as Shiro. He suggested buying it off of them, and they would let her pay it another time. Emil stuttered, but she happily took the offer. Just then, Gerald asked Emil to allow him to buy it all. He initially offered 30 coins, but then he changed his mind and offered 32 gold coins for it. Knowing that she had him in a chokehold, she insisted on 36 gold coins. The merchant is sweating like he's on Shark Tank. In the end, after subtracting the guild debt of 10 gold coins, it came to 26 gold coins. In addition, Gerald paid 2 more gold coins for the Grizzlies' balls, so the negotiation ended with a total of 28 gold coins paid. Imagine explaining this purchase to your accountant. With that settled, Gerald excused himself from the group. As he approached the door, he told everyone that he expected some excellent deals next time too. Hearing him say next time made Liar think that he wanted Silver Moon to continue to exist, which clearly showed that Emil had Gerald hanging on by a hair. Suddenly, Emil bowed her head, thanking everyone with utmost gratitude. However, Rolf told her that if she wanted to thank someone, then it should be Shiro. Kilfa agreed, noting that they just did what was natural as adventurers. Just then, Liar asked Emil to process the completion of their request. She wasn't quite amused by it, and she asked if she had to do it at that moment, even with Shiro being present. Shiro was surprised that he shouldn't be there, but Emil felt strongly about it. She believed his business there was done, so she urged him to go home. Suddenly, Liar asked how she was planning on processing a bodyguard request without the escort target. Emil struggled to come up with an answer, so she asked if it wouldn't be fine now that she had confirmed his safety already. However, Liar thought it was a fishy response, and he suspected that she was planning on stinting them on the reward again. Emil panicked, and she denied that there would be any way that she would do that. Finally, Liar calmed down. Since that was the case, he insisted on getting paid instead, and he also apologized for doubting her. He held his hand out to Emil, asking for 30 silver coins. Shiro was surprised by the amount, so Liar explained to him that it was too late to ask for a discount now. Shiro clarified that it wasn't what he meant. He paid 100 silver as the quest fee, but he was wondering if the remaining 70 silver would really be the guild's handling fee. That question hit like a courtroom objection. Liar pondered in thought, and while he was occupied, Emil slowly tried to sneak off. However, he quickly caught her and warned her not to run away. He demanded that she explain in detail. Neska, who had had enough of Emil, took out her staff and said she would incinerate her. Kilfa flashed a menacing smile, saying that she was a little angry too. Emil was horrified, and even more so when the gigantic Rolf loomed over her, saying that she would receive God's punishment. Liar was infuriated as well, and he vowed they wouldn't forgive her this time. Emil shrieked in fear and she ran for her life as she apologized. Bro assembled the Avengers of Debt Collection. Shiro, on the other hand, was glad that he didn't bring Aina along. That was what he truly thought from the bottom of his heart as he saw this new side of Emil. Later that day, Shiro returned home and he greeted Aina as soon as he opened the door. Aina, who was busy cleaning the house, happily welcomed him back. She asked how his adventuring journey went, and Shiro replied that it was an amazing experience. He asked if she wanted to hear about it, and she giddily said yes. Hearing that, Shiro decided to share the incident he had with the Grizzlies, and he even acted it out for dramatic effect. Shiro really said, "Let me demonstrate." After going through all the events one by one, he finally finished recounting his 3-day adventure. Aina listened the entire time with fascination. When he was done, she remarked that he was amazing, especially since he had defeated a murder grizzly. However, Shiro confessed that it wasn't him who defeated it, but the Azure Flash Party. Still counts as experience points. He merely helped a little bit. Still, Aina thought that if he weren't with them, they would have lost. Just then, their conversation was interrupted when someone called for Shiro at the door. When he went out to see who it was, he found that it was Karen. He asked what the matter was, but before he could get an answer, she hugged him tightly without warning. His face slammed into her gigantic breasts and she went on to cry hysterically. This is the weirdest way to die. Having heard that he encountered a murder grizzly, she worriedly asked if he was safe and if he was hurt anywhere. When Shiro, who was still stuck between her breasts, didn't reply, Karen asked what the matter was. She was now suspecting that his throat had been injured. Suddenly, Aina called out to Karen, telling her that Shiro couldn't breathe and that she should let him go. She immediately let go of Shiro and he desperately gasped for air. Just then, Shiro told Karen to relax. Azure Flash protected him, so as she could see, he was fine. Karen finally allowed herself to breathe and she was glad to see that he was okay. She then asked how it was, as she was curious if he had learned anything by traveling together with adventurers. Shiro confirmed that he learned a lot. If he could stock his new products up in time, the people coming for the inspection would surely be surprised by them. The phrase "stock up in time" made Karen chuckle, and she told Shiro that he didn't have to hide it. She knew he had a storage skill other than maybe being in possession of a storage item. Shiro anxiously denied it, and he pretended that he didn't have any idea what she was talking about. Karen laughed, pointing out that he was bad at lying. They had been few, but she had met people with rare skills before, so she could tell with one glance that he had the same smell as them. Shiro was stunned into silence and then inevitably admitted that she was exactly right. At that moment, he realized that a woman's intuition was really something. However, Karen corrected him and said that he had just fallen for her trap, hook, line, and sinker. The part about meeting a few was nothing but a lie. She just guessed it was the case since he stocked such a huge number of matches. Realizing that Karen was betting on the sickle, Shiro's jaw hit the floor in disbelief. Karen, on the other hand, was unapologetic. She told him to take it as practice for bargaining because hagglers definitely wouldn't be hindered by the truth. Shiro accepted that he was tricked, so he told himself to be more careful. Karen is running psychological warfare. Suddenly, Karen urged Shiro to get back on topic. She asked what kind of things he intended to sell now. This piqued Aina's curiosity, so she also said that she wanted to know. To answer their questions, Shiro took his bag to show the item that he intended to sell. He opened it for them to see and they were surprised upon seeing it. Karen was in disbelief, seeing that the item existed too. Shiro proudly shared that his first day of business in 3 days had concluded safely. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. It was Liar greeting Shiro and asking him if business was doing well. Neska was also with him, but she was quiet as always. Just then, Liar noticed that Shiro had an outstanding knack for lining up products neatly. However, Shiro credited it to Aina, who was the one responsible for setting up the displays for him. After the incident with the murder grizzly, Liar and Neska started dating. As the two of them subtly showed their public display of affection, Shiro secretly hoped that they would explode. The romance side quest is completed. Suddenly, Liar shared that he heard something from Emmy. He then asked Shiro if it was true that a big shot from some guild somewhere was coming to town. When Shiro confirmed that he was right, Liar hoped that it was an upstanding guild if it opened a branch in town. This confused Shiro, so he asked if there were guilds that were not upstanding. Liar said yes, and he added that there were lots of guilds with bad reputations. Some of them were Devil's Trident, Fang of the Venom Dragon, and worst of all, the Labyrinth Marauders. The branding is already a red flag. Just then, Aina mentioned that the latter mentioned guild was the one that the mayor had talked about. The Labyrinth Marauders was the name of the guild. This made Shiro wonder if Karen knew of the reputation of those Labyrinth Marauders, but even Liar wasn't sure of that. It could be that it was only among adventurers that their reputation was horrible. It could also be limited to that area. Shiro, on the other hand, had a guess of his own. This was not a world with phones or social networks, and something like that was probably commonplace. However, the Adventurers Guild with the worst reputation was coming to inspect their place. Shiro could only hope it passed without any incidents. Aina guessed that the inspector guy wasn't going to show up, so she asked Shiro if he thought he got lost. Shiro only thought the inspector was taking his time, even though it was a straight path from the next town over. Karen had been waiting at the town's entrance since yesterday, which made him want the man to come already even more. Karen's camping at the town gate like it's a concert line. Just then the evening bell rang, which meant that Aina could stop for the day. Shiro praised her for the good work, and not long after, she bid him goodbye. After that, he decided to close the shop, though it was a little early. Just as he was locking the door, a woman suddenly approached him, apologizing for disturbing him at that late time. Still, she asked if she could take a look at his items. This is the fantasy version of someone entering a store at 9:59 p.m. Shiro happily agreed to it, and he told her to look as much as she liked. And so the woman browsed the store, where her attention immediately landed on the rumored match. Shiro offered to demonstrate how to use it, and it didn't fail to impress the woman. She heard stories about it, but it really was an amazing item. Suddenly she saw a silver item nearby and she asked what it was. Shiro explained that it was a space blanket, and it was used like a blanket to keep warm. He asked if she wanted to try it, and the woman immediately tested it for herself. She put it over her arms, asking if she was doing it right. This was an item that the adventurers gave big praise for, and it even surprised Karen. The woman remarked that it was amazing and warm despite it being so thin. Just then she took another item and asked what it was. Shiro explained that it was a foldable water bottle, but before he could share more about it, the woman headed for the door. She thanked him for his explanations, but she was in a bit of a hurry, so he would have to excuse her. The woman left without waiting for Shiro, which made him wonder why she was in such a rush. Bro gave a full presentation, and she bought nothing. Several days after that, Aina ran to Shiro's house, screaming as she approached. She reported that it was terrible, which urged Shiro to ask what the matter was. Meanwhile, in town, a man approached Karen and asked if she was the mayor. It turned out to be the inspector guy, who had just arrived in town a little while ago. This was how Shiro found that the man actually showed up for the inspection. The plan was for Karen to first guide him through the town and the marketplace. Finally, she would lead him to her store where they would talk. However, that was no longer the case. It seemed like the plan had changed, and so Shiro immediately rushed to the guild to be present for the inspection. Upon arriving, he saw that Emil and the rest of Azure Flash were there as well. Karen was unamused by his arrival, but she also seemed relieved that he came. Just then, Shiro noticed a man before him, whom he suspected was the inspector. Karen whispered to him that the inspector seemed to be a very moody person, so she wanted him to try not to say anything disagreeable. Moody is the medieval way of saying this guy is toxic. Shiro wondered if something had happened while he was gone, but he merely reassured Karen that he was quite used to abusive language. He wouldn't give in to that, no matter how bad it would get. Karen smiled, and then she introduced Shiro to Gabus, the inspector. She claimed that he was the city's prized merchant. Shiro bowed before Gabus, saying that it was a pleasure to meet him. Aina also introduced herself to Gabus, informing him that she worked at the store. However, Gabus sighed upon hearing them talk. He expected a lot since he heard Shiro was a skilled merchant, but he couldn't believe that his only employee was a brat like Aina. He was quite disappointed to know that Shiro ended up being an immature greenhorn. Gabus started roasting before introductions ended. Shiro faked a smile amid the disrespect, but he promised himself he would punch Gabus if he said that again. Suddenly, Gabus asked what the hell the dusty guild building was. He continued to mock them, and he wondered if subhumans in the boonies couldn't clean properly. He really said subhumans like a racist final boss. Emil was infuriated, and she argued that she cleaned properly every day. Of course, she hid the part that it was all she could do because business was low. This made Gabus erupt in laughter, thinking it was a funny joke. He then asked if she meant to say make a mess. Just then, he told everyone that subhumans who couldn't work were a waste of air. Sensing that Kilfa and Emil were getting offended, Karen stepped in and suggested that Gabus take a look at the items Shiro was selling. Gabus decided to see for himself, and now he finally witnessed the rumored match in action. He blew the fire out, admitting that at least Shiro dealt in some quality goods. Just then, Karen asked what the verdict was, so Gabus gave her the good news. He threw the matchstick on the floor, and then he revealed that the Labyrinth Marauders would open a branch there. Karen was delighted to hear it, while Emil was infuriated that Gabus simply threw the matchstick on her floor. However, Gabus had his conditions. First, the Labyrinth Marauders would be the only guild allowed in town. He asked what the name of the guild was again, and he even insinuated that it was weak. When Emil answered that it was Silver Moon, Gabus insisted that they didn't need it and that they should close it down immediately. He continued, saying that his next condition would be being exempted from taxes. They couldn't make a profit this far out if that wasn't the case, so they would also have to cover the construction cost. As Gabus faced away to yap, Karen did her best to hold down Emil, who so badly wanted to beat up the obese man. This man's ego is as big as his waistline. Just then Gabus revealed his last condition. He wanted the exclusive right to buy and sell the matches. Shiro kept a straight face, seemingly unamused by what he said. Gabus pointed out that he seemed quite slow on the uptake, and now he questioned if he really was a merchant. Just then he peered closely into Shiro's face, telling him that they would buy up all his matches. That's not negotiation, that's takeover. Karen stepped in, wanting to stop Gabus. He angrily turned to her and asked what she wanted, and he pointed out that he was still talking with the retard. He quickly took that back and instead said that he was talking with the greenhorn. Still, Karen told him that although he would bring a lot of growth to their town, giving him a monopoly on the matches was too much. Gabus guessed that a countryside mayor like her wouldn't understand unless he made it simple, and so he told them to listen. There was a limit to the amount of goods that could be sold from the border town of Ninerich. With that, he asked what they thought would happen if they, who had branches all over the country, would buy up the entire stock. He answered it himself, revealing that they could make so much profit. He insisted that they couldn't even imagine it. Selling to them would mean the same as selling to the entire country. Gabus drooled at the thought of it, and he asked the group if they didn't like money. Shiro acknowledged that it was certainly an attractive proposal, but he refused. In the first place, there was a low limit to how many matches he could stock. Seeing how surprised Gabus was, Karen apologized to him. If those were his demands, she would like him to start negotiations from scratch. Gabus sneered in fury, and then he grabbed a liquor bottle nearby, throwing it on the wall next to Karen. Anger management left the chat. He angrily asked whose sake they thought he even bothered to come that far out in the sticks for. He hated the thought of their measly town where he could only find useless, weak adventurers. Suddenly, Shiro told him to wait. He went on to say that in the eastern forest he could find rare monsters, herbs, and metals. He asked if that was enough value for him to put a branch there. There were already adventurers using their town as their base. This seemed to pique Gabus's interest, but then he ended up laughing his head off. Just then he grabbed Shiro by the collar, calling him ignorant. He pointed at the Azure Flash Party, firmly saying that there were only shitty excuses for adventurers in their town. They were incompetents who only went there because they couldn't compete in the capital or any major cities. Nesca was eager to attack, but Liar, who was just as furious, stopped her. Azure Flash is about to speedrun a homicide. Still, Gabus pressed on, laughing at the thought that they even had any value. After dissing everyone in his sight, Gabus asked Shiro what it would be. If they put a branch there, even their desolate town would prosper. Its future depended on his decision. Shiro said that he needed time to think about it, but Gabus cut him off, saying that he didn't have that much free time. Suddenly, Gabus pointed at Aina and he told Shiro that if he were to deal with him, he could actually employ someone competent instead of that brat. Shiro was stunned and he asked Gabus what he had just said. That sentence activated boss fight music. Gabus smiled, seeing that he was a bit interested. He repeated that they could get him someone better than a useless brat, as their town had nothing but useless brats and dirty subhumans. Before he could even finish what he was saying, Shiro's fist slammed into his face. He angrily screamed at Gabus, calling him a good-for-nothing bastard and warning him to never go there again. The negotiation phase has ended. Before the unexpected knockdown scene occurred, Shiro's thoughts drifted elsewhere. He thought it was bad because it seemed like a countdown to something bad had begun. He remembered this situation because he had experienced it before. It was just like when he quit his black company. He snapped at his boss who was picking on a Kuhai who looked up to him. Shiro getting Vietnam flashbacks from office politics. And so when Gabus kept on calling Aina a brat, Shiro was no longer able to keep his rage inside. He ended up punching Gabus's arrogant face, warning the bastard to never come back. The rest of the group was stunned at the unexpected event, but they were somehow relieved. Karen muttered Shiro's name, but before she could say anything else, he said he hoped Gabus didn't do anything inappropriate to her. Karen was surprised and she tried to deny it, but then her head hung low as she admitted that Gabus had touched her breasts a little. Gabus just added 5 more punches to the combo. Shiro's eyes widened like a predator. Then he went back to Gabus, grabbing him by the hair. Karen pleaded with him to stop already, but he paid her no heed. He pulled Gabus by the hair, dragging him toward the door. Rolf called out to Shiro, asking if he wanted him to help out. Shiro didn't pass on the offer, and together they used his special free-falling move, the pile driver. Bro got slammed into the Shadow Realm. As they continued beating up Gabus, Shiro's thoughts wandered off to his previous life. He remembered it all too well. At the time he decided to quit his job, he used the forbidden special move that led to a legal dispute when he used it on his harassing boss. By the time Shiro was done with Gabus, the poor man was left twitching on the floor. Shiro despised violence, but if anyone said something despicable to his precious employee Aina or took advantage of the always gentle Karen, then he wouldn't just sit up and listen to it. Touched by his monologue, Aina hugged him, crying while she muttered his name. Suddenly, Gabus got up, angrily asking how Shiro dared to do that to him. He gritted his teeth, warning that he wouldn't get away with it. He asked Shiro if he didn't know that he was part of the top brass at Labyrinth Marauders. He got folded and is still acting tough. For doing that, Shiro and the entire town would have them all face his revenge. Karen suddenly stepped in, asking if she should take that as a declaration of war against her city. If that were the case, it would be her duty as mayor to inform Margrave Bashur, who ruled their land. Worried, Gabus tried to explain that it wasn't what he meant. Then, with all his audacity, he tried to plead his case over the monopoly on matches. He even promised to let the whole incident go as water under the bridge if they considered it. This dude just couldn't take a hint. However, Shiro had enough of his foolishness, so he grabbed Gabus by the ear because it seemed like he couldn't hear well. Once again, he told Gabus to listen. He didn't want to make any deals with the labyrinth marauders, and if adventurers like him tried to come to his store, he would kick them out immediately. As if he were a bloodthirsty killer, he asked Gabus if he got it. The poor man shrieked, and he desperately bowed before Shiro. Still, he refused to give up the deal about the matches, and he even offered to buy them at any price. He almost called Shiro a bastard, but he quickly changed his tone into a polite one. That self-correction saved his entire lifespan. However, despite the man's begging, Shiro apologized because he intended to continue selling them retail thereafter. Gabus cursed under his breath, knowing that he had no choice but to forget about it. Suddenly, he turned to Karen, asking if they should talk further about opening a branch in town. Karen cut him off right away, asking if he couldn't tell that this whole deal had already fallen through. Just then, Liar laughed hysterically and pointed at Gabus for being an idiot. He was so greedy that he couldn't get his hands on either deal. He tried to be a mogul and became a meme. Gabus screamed at him to shut up. Then he said that shitty excuses for adventurers like him should keep their mouths shut. Then in a split second, Liar appeared in front of Gabus, lifting him by the collar. He demanded that the bastard repeat what he said as he had been quiet and listening that whole time. Shiro tried to stop Liar, reminding him that violence was no good. Liar was taken aback as Shiro had just done it himself. Still, Liar let Gabus go, thinking that there wasn't any value in beating up scum like him. He kicked the man out of the building, and he told him to run back to his beloved capital. Bro got physically removed from the server. Before Gabus could even plead his case, the door was already shut before him. Despite the encounter being over, Liar still couldn't calm down at all. Rolf felt the same way, and so did Emil, who was still seething in anger. Karen encouraged them to forget about the fool, as there was no need to dirty their hands with him. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. Liar angrily marched toward it, thinking that Gabus just didn't learn. Having had enough of it, he decided to use the man as stress relief. However, instead of seeing Gabus's stupid face, they were greeted by the woman who had taken an interest in Shiro's products. She apologized for the disturbance, but she came right away when she heard that the mayor was at the guild. Shiro remembered her, but he kept quiet. Just then, Karen approached the woman and introduced herself as the mayor. She then asked for the woman's name, and she shared that it was Ne Mirage. She was there as a messenger from the guild Fairy's Blessing. Upon hearing that, Lai recalled that it was the largest guild in the country. Karen asked Ne what business she had with her, and Ne replied that it was simple. She came to ask if she would let Fairy's Blessing open a branch in town. That's the cleanest business upgrade. Unable to believe the offer, Shiro asked if she said that Fairy's Blessing truly wanted to open a branch in their town. Emil warned Karen that it was a trap for sure, which disheartened Ne. Ne approached Emil, asking if she was the guild's employee. She then shared that she actually wanted to speak to her. She asked Emil if they could use the guild as a branch of Fairy's Blessing, and she promised that she would get a super pay raise. Ne stretched her hands in the air to show how exactly Emil's salary would increase, which somehow left Emil in awe. She explained that it would multiply at least 5 times over. That number hit harder than the pile driver earlier. Just then, Emil bowed on the floor, screaming that she accepted the offer. From that day onwards, Silver Moon shall be a branch of Fairy's Blessing. Emil clung to Ne's leg, and she begged Karen to accept the offer. She believed that they would never get a chance like that again. Karen pondered for a while, then she turned to Shiro to ask him for his opinion. Shiro didn't give an answer right away and instead suggested that they hear out Ne first. Because of that, Karen suggested continuing the discussion in her office. There, Shiro asked Ne to explain about herself first. They wanted to hear her reason for opening a branch store in town. Ne explained that a few days ago, a party belonging to their guild discovered a map of the continent in a dungeon, seemingly made by an ancient magical civilization. A map of the continent should never have been discovered before, and it was so rare that it had been called the discovery of the century by the guild. Suddenly, the plot became Indiana Jones. However, the important part started on the map that she had. It showed that in the forest east of the town there should be tons of places like ancient kingdoms, labyrinths, and temples. Karen was shocked, and she asked if that was really true. Ne firmly confirmed that it was. And the reason why the labyrinth marauders wanted a branch there was likely because they knew of and wanted to monopolize those ruins. That man really thought he was slick. They tried to force unreasonable terms as usual and got rejected, but Fairy's Blessing wanted to use all their strength in order to conquer the ruins. And then they also thought that the town would make for a suitable base. Shiro asked why that was, and so Ne explained that it was because in their town, the only guild was the Silver Moon. If they could make them into a branch, there would be no need to build a new building. They could also start conquering the ruins immediately. There was also one more reason. In Ninarich, Shiro's store was present. The items in his store were quite wonderful, and she was convinced it would be of great help to them. With that, Ne bowed respectfully, asking for Shiro to open a branch store in their guild. She asked him to consider doing so. Suddenly, Karen asked what conditions Nee was going to demand of the town in exchange for Fairy's blessing opening a branch there. Nee was puzzled when they mentioned the conditions and demands, and she asked what she was talking about. Shiro felt embarrassed to say it, but he revealed everything that Gabus had done to them. Filled with anger, Nee banged her fist on the table, screaming that Gabus was so impudent. Even the messenger is mad. She couldn't believe that he made such demands, even though he was granted permission to open a branch. Shiro agreed with her, and he mentioned that he had even called him an idiot. Karen also added that Gabus sexually harassed her. Nee frowned, unable to believe that the man had the audacity to do something like that. Just then, Nee told them to be at ease because Silver Moon had already accepted her request, so they had no need to build a new guild. However, they wanted lodgings for their guild members to be constructed, and of course they would pay for it. As for the lands where the lodgings would be built, paying tax would go without saying. Suddenly, Karen asked if she had correctly remembered her name to be Nee. She then held out her hand, saying that she would love to have her. Nee's eyes sparkled with awe, and she was grateful for her acceptance. And like that, the dysfunctional Silver Moon became a branch of the country's #1 guild, Fairy's Blessing. It was a great triumph, especially for Emil, whose salary increased by 5 times, from struggling guild to #1 affiliate. Several days later, Shiro and Aina went through their usual days at the store. As a customer left, Shiro called and asked Aina to bring him a box of big matches. However, Aina remained standing, frozen and refusing to face him. Seeing that she was zoned out, Shiro walked up to her and whispered in her ear. Aina immediately snapped out of it and asked if he wanted her to sweep the floor. Shiro said no, and he repeated that he needed the large matches. Hearing that, Aina quickly went to get them for him. Later on, Shiro wondered aloud if they should close the store for the day. Aina, however, seemed completely lost in her own thoughts. She didn't even respond when Shiro asked her to clean up the store. She's in another dimension right now. Noticing that she wasn't listening, Shiro hesitantly called out to her again. Even then, Aina barely reacted. Watching her like that, he couldn't help but realize that she had been unusually absent-minded lately. Concerned, he decided it might be best to ask her about it. Suddenly, Aina approached him, and he asked what it was. Aina opened her mouth to speak, but the words refused to come out. She tried several times, each attempt ending with the same hesitation. Even after gathering her courage, she still struggled to say what was on her mind. Finally, after forcing herself to speak, she asked Shiro if he could lend her some money. That took maximum courage. As she nervously pleaded with him, her hands accidentally knocked over the small tower of coins on the table. The coins scattered across the floor as she hurriedly knelt down, her head lowered in apology. Shiro smiled, then he asked how much she needed. Aina cried, admitting that she was just a bother to him. She apologized, but Shiro gently patted her on the head and told her that it was fine. He assured her that she shouldn't think of herself that way. He understood that it must have taken a great deal of courage for her to ask, and he didn't see her as a bother at all. After a moment, Shiro gently asked if something had happened to her mother. He encouraged Aina to tell him the whole story, explaining that there might be something he could do to help. Suddenly, Liar entered the store, inviting Shiro to go grab some food with him and Azure Flash. Seeing that Aina was crying her eyes out, Liar apologized and asked if he was in the middle of something. Just then, Karen busted into the store, yelling that she had come to get Shiro's opinion about the town's development. However, she saw the situation with Aina, so she decided it would be better to wait for a later day. Liar also guessed that it would be better for them to come again later because it seemed like they came at a bad time. Social awareness kicked in instantly. Meanwhile, Shiro asked Aina what she wanted, and he advised her to disregard what Karen and Liar were saying. Aina wiped her tears, then she told everyone that it was okay for them to stay. Because of that, Shiro suggested that they all listen to her and give her their advice. Liar reassured Aina that they could leave it to them. Rolf was especially good with things like that. Karen also offered to help because it was her duty as mayor to help those who lived there. She would be glad to help. Aina got the whole town backing her. Hearing everyone speak so kindly to her, Aina became even more emotional and began crying again. Shiro also wanted to help her, so he encouraged her to talk. Finally, Aina revealed the devastating news: her mother was ill. Back at their home, Aina's mother lay in bed suffering from a violent cough that refused to stop.